And now we are recording. Welcome, everybody. So happy that you are here. We're just letting everybody show up as everybody comes in. I see you, Wendy, Holly, Chris, Melanie. So happy that you're here. And while you're coming in, here is the invitation before we get started, because here's the trick. Rosalyn and I are both living in the oneness experience, so we have no clue what's going to happen in the next hour. We have chosen to leave all the planning up to the part of us that knows what's best. So the invitation right now, before we do anything else, is, if you can, to take, hi Lisa, to close your eyes. If you're not driving, the invitation is to close your eyes, maybe even place your hand on your heart and just listen to my voice. As you listen to my voice, the second invitation is to watch your breath. No need to do anything with the breath, but watch it. Just watch your breath and listen to my voice. And from that place, the invitation is to shelve all expectations. Something invited you to be here now. There's a gift in this moment. There's a gift in this experience. There is an opportunity for awakening. There's an opportunity to know yourself in love and joy and peace. And all you have to do is give up everything. Let go of all your expectations and be here now with myself, Cyndi, with Rosalyn and Rourke, with this free edition of TGF TV, Living in Oneness. And from this place, you don't have to open your eyes yet, unless you want to. I invite you to join me in welcoming Rosalyn Rourke. Rosalyn, this is what Rosalyn would like you to know about her. Her professional career started as a child when she was attempting to understand the craziness in her family. She followed that early training with an MSW psychotherapist degree. And though she loved working intimately with people, she found that psychology was missing something. And in the late 1980s, she found ACIM and was immediately taken with its psycho-spiritual insights. She was lucky enough to be invited with a group of psychotherapists to study, I should have practiced this name, Ramesh Balsekar, an Indian did I get that wrong?
Yes, no, very good.
Okay, an Indian non-dual guru. His teacher was Ramana Maharshi. Ramesh was said to be great with the Western mind, and Rosalyn found that he was. When she found the Teachers of God 7 or 8 years ago, joy took an exponential lead. Oh, I'm getting chills. An exponential lead in her life. She has taken every class offered by the Teachers of God Foundation. You know, you and I both. All of this training became the backdrop for an event that changed her life. Her beloved daughter passed away suddenly 3.5 years ago. And with that, she had an awakening experience about her daughter's death that would not have happened, she doesn't think, without all of her prior seeking. Living in Oneness has helped her integrate a new way of living with fellow travelers, for which she states she will be forever grateful. There are tears in my eyes and my heart feels wide open. And Rosalyn, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you. My heart is open now too. I would like to say something about the class of at the Teachers of God called Living in Oneness, because I'm afraid that if we get, not really afraid, but if we get lost in my story, we might not get to this. And I really, really want to say it as an opening with gratitude, but also because it was really significant for me. In thinking about doing this interview with you, Cyndi, I asked myself, what did I receive from that particular class? I feel like I've been on a co-journey, a co-pioneering journey all along these last 7 or 8 years with Lisa and Bill. I remember where they were and where I was at many, many different junctures. But there is something particular that happened after I took this class. I was in the original group the first time they taught this class. And when I was earlier at a Rupert conference, he mentioned that one of the things that holds people back is their loyalty to their previous training. He said he had that, whether it's Buddhism or it doesn't matter, Christianity, A Course in Miracles, it holds people back in that bhakti kind of way, that devotional way, where it's not a bad thing. We have so much gratitude for the peace or the joy that we've received that we kind of try to hold on to it. And I was in a funny place since 1995 about A Course in Miracles and non-duality. I kept them kind of separate. And you don't really go further if you have A Course in Miracles understanding without what Lisa and bring to A Course in Miracles, which is the non-dual pointers underneath. We say the Course in Miracles is progressive. And when I learned non-duality, I only heard those words, Holy Spirit and you and God, and you're smaller and God is bigger, and the voice of God and your voice, and on and on. Those words don't mean anything when you really get the meaning underneath. And so my friends that went to India with me were only non-dual students. So when I was with them, I think they kind of felt like, why are you holding on to this Course in Miracles where it says choose again? In India, they're very clear. This particular teacher was very clear that there is no doer. There is no one choosing again. But Ramesh added something very important, and that was, it will feel like you're the doer. So if you're laying on a couch and you say, I'm not going to get up, well, actually, you won't be able to not get up. Eventually, a thought will come to you, like get a drink of water, call this person. And it's only our perception of who is the thinker that makes the difference. If we think we're the thinker from the small mind, then we got up. But if awareness gave us that thought, it feels the same. And that's super important. In this country, I have found that the non-dual teachers soft pedal that because it doesn't matter, that difference. But when I went to non-dual conferences, I kept my Course in Miracles links and love hidden. And then I noticed people would point out to me, my good friends, oh, over there in that corner are the Course in Miracles students. So other people were separating with this too. And getting back to my main point, Lisa and Bill helped me integrate it where I can hear anybody's dualistic words, and they are no triggers to me. I hear it as the oneness, the pointers. So even some of the famous lines like I need do nothing, we focus on the nothing, but it's the I. There is no I doing anything that is really meant underneath that one sentence from the non-dual perspective. So it was, that class was a tremendous freeing for me, as well as an integration. And since my daughter Melissa passed, and I use it in that bio, I had quotes around the word dead because I never use that word death, except if I'm talking to people who have no spiritual background. And I know that that's, let's say if it's a grief group. But the reason that word matters is that I'm reminding myself every time I speak of her that she just passed this world as we know it, but that there is no death. That's why I never use the word. It's just a personal reminder. It's not that the word triggers me. So maybe I should speak of what that awakening was, because it's a little different. Is that okay, Cyndi, if I talk about what?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
But first,
Yeah.
because you said something, and so I always love like the one sentence when you and I spoke earlier in the week, and I love the way you just described it. But for me, it was all summed up in the line that you spoke when we talked on Tuesday, which was, this living in oneness experience let me come out of the closet.
Oh, yes. Yes. I earlier this week, I had that insight that I was experiencing life like a gay person who was still in the closet. And when I was in Course in Miracles meetings, I never mentioned non-duality. And when I was in non-dual meetings, I covered up A Course in Miracles. And now I feel so free because I don't focus on how the person is responding. I just speak my truth. And I notice that people hear it the way they're ready to hear it or not. And it doesn't matter. I only want to be in truth. So, yeah. And yeah. Anything else, listening?
Well, and the other is just for those who are listening, the Living in Oneness experience, this course that Rosalyn was talking about, is something that we do 2 or 3 times a year at in the Teachers of God Foundation. It's not currently open for registration. It will be again towards the end of the summer, but there's a lot of people in the room right now that are in it. Our hearts are open. We will be communicating more and more about what's going on. A group goes through it, and basically what it is, just in a nutshell, is a 12-week experience where there is the very conscious, very open merging of the basic non-dual teachings and A Course in Miracles, and an invitation to practice with a large group of people all of these basic tools and techniques. Yeah, so that's it in general. I just wanted to let people know that there'll be a link to TGF TV and a link to Evolve at the end of this presentation, but Living in Oneness experience is currently closed for registration until the end of the summer. So with that being said, what I'm going to do now, Rosalyn, if it's okay with you, is I'm going to mute. I am going to actually go off screen while you share your story, and I'm going to just check in with Facebook and listen and see if there are any comments. Does that work for you?
Yes, and I'm going to say a little more about living in oneness. For me now, this is a reciprocal world. And the lessons or the meaning or the trajectory of each of our individual lives is meant for everyone, not for ourselves as individual people. And I feel that Lisa and Bill are being used by this reciprocal universe. to be the conveyors of A Course in Miracles to the non-dual world. Bill started earlier, and I was right along with him when he started his very first speaking of publicly of translating the words into non-dual language. And now Lisa's come on board with her special gifts, and I know that I'm using the word special. I'm very aware that I'm not using it the way A Course tells us not to use it. I feel we're all being used for the greater good, for the whole. And it appears as though we're being used for personal, for our personal aggrandizement or personal trajectory or personal lessons, but that isn't the way I see it. And I think I understand it more deeply because it isn't anything they meant to do. And I understand it more deeply because of what's happened to me after my daughter Melissa passed. I never planned to do a TEDx talk. I never planned to be a public speaker. I never planned to be a teacher. It was not even in my personal interest. And it was not anything that at any step I said, let me mark it, let me ask, let me try, let me do. It's just something that has been happening. So let me take you back. I think it's important because I called it in as I called my experience with Melissa an awakening. And that was only after it, actually a couple of years afterwards, that I said, oh, that was an awakening. And how we hold things is kind of important because it includes then the small mind if we have a way to hold it that makes sense. But I think it's very important to say that the small mind never can understand awareness. It can quiet down and have the stories coincide with actions, but books and just ideas don't make for an awakening experience because the small mind can't get it. So let me take you back to 2018, January, when my dear Melissa passed away unexpectedly. And of course, being a psychotherapist and a feeling type person, I was in the full throes of shock and started down the road of grief stages. And I felt fully entitled, as anybody would. And so I would start even in on memories. Oh, this was such a wonderful time. And it usually ended up with, and I'll never have that again with her. And I was in full steam ahead in misery and suffering, feeling that, of course, this was the only way. I mean, your daughter, quote unquote, died. How else can you feel? There were no concepts. I'd read The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. It was a nice book, but it made no difference at this time. So there I was suffering, having I wouldn't say a party because it wasn't fun, but I was full steam ahead into suffering. How else can I say it? And people expected me to suffer because they would say things like, grief is the price of loving. And so it went. And I can't tell you how long that went on because I wasn't processing myself. But over and over again, it felt as though I was being shaken from the outside. Now, it's not important if I was actually being shaken from the outside. I can tell you my experience that it was not nervousness or keyed upness inside. I was physically shaken. It's also not important who or what was shaking me. What's important is what happened. Finally, I realized, oh my God, this has been happening. And I awoke to the moment. And now we're talking about a new moment. And I realized in this moment, suffering was gone. How can that be? I was remembering my daughter was quote unquote dead. How can I be free of suffering? It was almost as though I was supposed to suffer. Those were the rules of living. Your daughter died, you suffer. That's what we're taught about death. But in this moment, we were in the same place, Melissa and I. She didn't have a body, I didn't have a body. And there were no problems. There was no suffering. And then the next thought I had was, how can I even say this? How can I even admit that I'm not suffering? I was completely blown away. And then I kept that to myself for a long while. But I kept on returning to no suffering, which now we know was awareness. I just found that at any moment I could return to that. And in my TEDx preparations, I'm calling that the radical now, because I'm going to be talking to people unlike you that may not have a spiritual bent toward this, or the explanations that Lisa and Bill gave yesterday about death and resurrection and the Course and integrating all of that. And the way I'm going to define the radical now, and this could be useful in your life, just about whatever you suffer about. It doesn't have to be about a death. And the way I'm defining that is there aren't any stories. So if we start out with local awareness, noticing that we're suffering, like I was suffering about Melissa passing, or you might be suffering about what you just did, what you just said, or the pain in your body, you notice that there's a history to any of those sentences. Oh, you've said those kind of things before. Oh, you need to write another forgiveness letter because you've done that before. Oh, you need to self-improve. All those things are stories. So you just notice this place that I'm calling the radical now has no past, no future. It fits with quantum physics, because physics tells us there's no time. But I'm saying the radical now because of the part of us that still believes in time. But I'm tweaking it to have a new meaning. And I think it's very useful, because those of us who've been Course in Miracles students, or anybody who's taken the 40-day program, is used to watching our mind like a hawk. And we start to sense when there's a story and when there's not. And the gift of this is that we don't need to analyze the story. We don't need to write a forgiveness letter because there's no process. We can enter the radical now at any moment. It's always there. And so that was the beginning of things changing for me. When I finally did tell my non-dual friends about this experience, because it wasn't their experience, I kind of got this feeling of, well, that's nice now. That's nice you have this now. And that's nice whatever, but they couldn't relate to it either. So at Bill's, so I kept quiet. I thought, well, that's doesn't need to be anybody else's experience. I don't need to share that. And when I went to Bill's first presence conference, and I went to Locke Kelly's glimpse practices, I noticed, okay, that's the ticket. I can now share these moments. It doesn't have to be about Melissa and my story. It can be for anyone. So I began, that was how I see it, as awareness giving me my next step, because I could do free meditation classes using his methods, which very quickly became changed into Rosalyn's methods. And it's very interesting to me. I get a tickling laugh response when I watch how awareness moves us along. So I was calling it, up until last week, effortless mindfulness free meditation classes that I was giving. And I checked it with him a while ago. Is it okay if I use your words, your label, your trademark? Because actually, when I do it, it's my own. It hardly ever resembles what you do. And he, being the generous soul and a non-dual teacher that he is, feels no ownership over it and said, sure, go ahead. So sorry, your daughter passed. And so I continued to use it until recently, when his people got a hold of that transaction and told me, you ought to name it yourself and claim your way yourself with your words. Basically, that's his trademark. And instead of feeling let down, I really understood it as awareness telling me, you're now ready to claim your way of teaching this. You no longer need to hide under Locke Kelly's authorization. And so it just seems to keep progressing. It looks like Lisa's on. Does she want to talk?
Lisa's, she's sending me texts, and she's sending all these messages. And I said, do you want to be uploaded? Do you want to come and talk to Rosalyn? Because she's like, Lisa, go ahead and turn your video on so people can see
I haven't read anything in your chat, so I don't know anything.
She is so psyched about you and your light. And I was like, just Lisa, come on and share your joy. You have to unmute too, Lisa.
I didn't realize when Cyndi said, do you want to be upgraded as a panelist, it meant I would be coming on video. So you're looking at my hair from, I love you so much, Rosalyn. And Cyndi, thank you for having her on. You are just expressing everything in such a clear way. And, to have a story like losing your daughter, and realizing that whole process you allowed yourself to go through. And that's, I'm I'm just sitting here blown away in joy listening, because it's really a demonstration. There's a way out of suffering for everyone. I guess that's what I want to say. And I love, Rosalyn, what you said of what Rupert says of how so many people get locked into a particular spiritual path. And really, we have to keep our minds open to everything, to realize, if one way is not working for you in the moment, then why not stay open? So, yeah.
Yeah, and then life gives you things you could never expect, you could never dream of. The world teaches us to be the doer, and none of us that are here are, believe in that, and yet we go back to that. I have a very cute story, because I don't 100% stay in this awareness. I 100% have it about death. I 100% have it about awareness. But I have a very cute story. I'm here in Philadelphia visiting my grandson and my other daughter, Allie, and she has an issue with getting clutter. And so she asked us to help her with the clutter. And I happily said yes, because somebody else's clutter is real easy to get rid of. And I joyfully was willing to do that. And then as I began getting rid of the clutter, I was going, how can you buy so much? How I started getting into judgment. Oh my God, 6 cans of baking soda because you couldn't find the other 5. So you bought the 6th one. And oh my God. And you know what it was like? It was like a shoe that's too tight. You know how you could start putting on a shoe, you didn't know it was too tight. And it was just like that. I thought it would be fine to wear those shoes, to go over there and it was fine the moment I stepped back into awareness. But awareness is like a home now. It's where I live. It's where the joy, it's where the peace is. If I step out and wear a tight pair of shoes, I want to get them off and go home again. And so I feel as though my gift now is to talk about the transition back and forth between leaving and going back to awareness, because we have wonderful teachers that say they live in awareness. And I have another story, but I'll wait for responses to that, not just keep talking.
I actually am feeling, because when you were discussing your story initially, you said something that I want to go back to. And maybe you can even give us an experience of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you said it very quickly. And now you're talking about moving back and forth. You said that you found it possible, and I may be paraphrasing, but this is what I heard. In any given moment, what I heard you say, the pain always came from the story. And you found that you were able to, whether it was a pain in your arm or the pain in your heart, or wishing that your daughter was here, or reliving something that happened 10 years ago, or whatever it is, you found peace in dropping the story.
Mm-hmm.
Did I hear you say that right? That
Yes. So feelings, a feeling is part of an emotion, and feelings and emotions last 90 seconds in the brain. They have proven that. What makes it seem like they go on and on is that we add to it, we feed it. So there's a sensation, a feeling of whatever. It's the labeling of it that starts the story. So it's not that, this is really important. I'm so glad you brought this up. So it's not that I didn't have any sensations after that about Melissa passing on. There would be a contraction. Sometimes there would, for maybe a year, I would be teary when I talked about it, but it wasn't a stage of grief that was labeled. And often it wasn't anything even about Melissa. It would start with Melissa, 90 seconds, and I would be feeling something that I never put a label on it. And then when a person was involved, the kindness and the love from the other person was so tremendous that I kept on being teary. So by not being in the stages of grief, and in case someone doesn't know them, they're so well known, unfortunately, because it looks like rules of living, which Elizabeth Kubler-Ross never meant for it to be. Rules of living with death, quote unquote. She never meant that. She was describing what she saw happened. But I'll come back to what you were asking, Cyndi. So I never labeled it as depression, anger, shock, anger, bargaining. And when acceptance is at the bottom. She never meant to say those stages will lead to acceptance. Acceptance is letting go of the tug of war. All those stages of grief are about fighting what is. All of them. And they have an unfortunate result, which is they turn us inward. They close us off. Think of being depressed. Think of being angry. Think of being bargaining. If only I had done this, she wouldn't have died. If only I called the medics. If only this, if only that. All of those are a tug of war with what happened. But we can go straight to acceptance by not labeling and not adding to the story.
So, yeah, I'm inspired because I'm so glad Lisa's here. So it's coming up. So early on in the Living in Oneness experience, in the first couple of weeks, Lisa teaches a process where we simply remove the I am from whatever's being experienced. And I think that's what I'm hearing you say. So in this moment, in this moment, there may be an energy of sadness or depression or physical heartache coming up. And you could just say, oh, look, there's an ache in the heart, not my heart, not I am heartache.
Cyndi, that's right. But I would take it a step further. I wouldn't even call it an ache. I wouldn't call it anything. It's just a noticing. We don't actually need the word unless we're going to talk to somebody about it. We feel a contraction. We feel tears in our eyes, but we don't have to call it anything. So it's both the first part of not saying I am feeling such, and it's also the second part, not saying what you're feeling. It's just happening. But we don't need to say what it is that's happening. That starts the story. We try to find a word to fit the situation, and now we're in a story. But it's just happening, and it happened from local awareness. You're aware. There was a twinge. The twinge is even over by the time I can tell you about the twinge and found the right word. It's already over. So we don't even need that. But it's just, it's easy. And the reason it's easy is it feels so good to let it go. And we do like to go to easy. We do like to go to a lack of suffering. And you notice that we never call it the ego because things are just happening. And that's so useful because my ego is a whole other it's a whole other process of improving and getting rid of and undoing and mind training. But I have to say that the years of choosing again, when I thought I was doing mind training on my small mind, helped like Lisa's watch yourself like a hawk. It does help because the moment I started judging my daughter's buying baking soda, it was the tight shoe. So it wasn't me choosing again, but I am remembering there's another way. And it's so beyond words. It's so beyond even another choice, but it's happening and it's there. So it, it all has its place. And I think whatever we're attracted to as a teaching is what our next step is. I want to say one more thing about intuition, because I do hear things in words. Not everybody hears words, but our eyes do focus sometimes on something that's always been in the room. Let's say it's a lipstick. Cyndi was saying something about lipstick. Something silly like a lipstick. But if we experiment, that lipstick has been there for 2 years. How come my eyes are focusing on it right now? That could be your intuition. I'm not saying lipstick is important, but you don't know. and following that intuition. Okay, maybe I'll put lipstick on today. Who knows what that's for? But when we don't follow up on what our eyes just saw, we're saying, no, thank you. I'll stay where I am. It sounds silly, but intuition comes. Let's say you get dressed in the same order every day. Most of us do. And then today you say, go get this other thing. Well, we say, no, I got to finish getting dressed. No, go get the other thing. Why did it happen that day? So it comes in very minor, usually in my experience, simple ways that we don't recognize as holy or spiritual or life directing. But when we start listening and we start following and we start believing in that more than our small mind that is logical, miracles happen. I wouldn't have done that, but look what happened when I ate breakfast in the middle of what I thought was my yoga practice. I will follow things that my mind says, stop doing that. Don't go eat. You didn't finish. No, I will go because something else happened. And it sounds so mundane, but when we can practice those things, then we get the bigger and bigger intuitions, is my experience.
So my current intuition is to ask Lisa to unmute because I'm feeling her comments just flowing through me, and I can't wait to hear the words that go with them.
I'm grateful that this message is being expressed. That's all I can say. Like, Rosalyn, what you're saying so many things that I hope people are hearing. Like I personally want to put this video on YouTube, and I want to send it out to my whole mailing list because a lot of people are stuck. They're stuck in spiritual ideas. I love what you were just saying of like going between the worlds now, like in the world, but not of it. Like so many people are so stuck in trying to heal and forgive. They're stuck in like trying to transform and resurrect and wake up and all of these ideas that are part of the process, but let's just be done with it. Like you are awake, you are awareness, you are consciousness, you are love. Enlightenment is just the realization of it. And now we can take our true function, which is to be here. Like we don't have to spend our time anymore waking up and trying to get somewhere later where I'm healed and whole and perfect. No, you're healed and whole and perfect now. So I guess what I would love to hear you say is more on this idea of being in the world and not of it. Like how we begin to show up. And you've already expressed one way of really following the prompts, listening and not holding on to your schedule of like, oh, this is my breakfast time. And I'd love to hear more about your experience with that.
Well, I think it's a couple of things, but again, it's not a doing. I want to say something about that first. When I took your healing cure, and I mean, I have taken every single class that you and Bill have offered. The only thing I haven't done is been with Bill at 7:30 in the morning, because in Seattle, that's 4:30. But when I took the healing cure with you, Lisa, I remember telling you personally that my goal, because I used to be obsessed with food, I used to be a binge eater, I used to weigh 212 pounds. And my wish, my greatest wish was that food would become like brushing or flossing my teeth. When I brush or floss my teeth, I do it regularly. I don't go into should I or shouldn't I. I just do it every day. But the most important thing is that I don't evaluate it afterwards. I don't say, did I do a good job? Did I do every corner of my mouth? It just is. And I never got to tell you this, Lisa, but it got even better than that after the healing cure. If I am pulled into old conditioning, because I was food obsessed for so many years, or dieting or restricting or binge eating or one form or another. If that old conditioning comes up, and especially before I've woken up in the morning, every day I used to wake up thinking, what did I eat yesterday? Is this a punishment day? Or, reevaluating. Now, if I'm pulled into an old conditioned thought about what I ate, to review it and evaluate it, I cannot even remember what I ate. I can't even, it's so much better than I could have figured out from my small self. So now I'm getting more and more experiences. It's not that anybody, I mean, the healing cure is wonderful, but you don't have to have the healing cure. All of us are a localization of awareness. We are a localization of God. And so there is a trajectory for all of us to move from suffering into being what trees and plants are, which is their full lives. Animals, cats and dogs, they are themselves because they're not second guessing and creating stories. So getting back to Lisa's question, if I notice a story, no matter how good a story I think it is, meaning I still have stories that come from past about a friend, and she always does this, or she this or that. The minute I notice it, I drop it. And when I'm willing to drop it, and I'm always willing once I become aware of it. So local awareness is my friend. It's just that sometimes it goes on a little longer and sometimes it's immediate. But when I'm willing to drop the story, the greater awareness, the big awareness, the awareness with a capital A, the presence, the truth of who we are, the truth of what God is. I get to be that without the highs of being better than, without the lows of trying to fix myself, without needing any self-improvement or any task. It's such a relief that it draws me back more and more than chocolate ever did, because there was a price to pay for chocolate in the abundance that I ate it. There's no price in a small amount of chocolate. It feels good. But eating a whole cake, everybody can understand there's a price. No price to going back to awareness. So it becomes more and more of a draw, and suffering becomes less and less attractive. I used to be addicted to soap operas because they matched my inside. Bad things happen no matter what. Love fails. Everybody's searching, and it's all about bodies. That was my inner life.
Yeah, I love the simplicity of your expression again. It's just, that's the one thing that Bill's always saying in my life and in living in oneness is don't touch it. Like, I think that is one of the most practical, simple things we can do, is like when a pain comes up, a sensation, a problem. Like, I love what you just said, Rosalyn, is like, I don't have to fix it. I don't have to improve myself. I don't have to do anything. You just have to just stay present and don't touch it.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to touch it, notice that you want to touch it. And that's where you are. And that's everything. Oh, I want to make this person worse in my judgment. I do. I want that temporary high of feeling better than. How does that compare to awareness? So I think that's what Rupert means by bring it closer. And don't touch it is the same as bring it closer. It's just like the other side of a cookie or of the other, it's the other side of a block. It's the same block, because bring it closer, it dissipates. That sounds like a doing, but it is already close. When you want to get into the judgment of this person, you're already into it. So just go ahead, bring it really, really close.
So
And then
I have another question coming up about something that you just casually mentioned in this great story, but I think it's worth putting words around. And it came out that way because in my head, what I heard you say, it's not necessary to put words around experience, and that you are in a place now, when you were talking about it, where you're able to experience without commentary.
Mhm.
And I'd love to hear more words. I'm entertaining myself right now. I would love to hear more words about being being without words.
Well, I think probably my best teaching, and I take this experience of Melissa passing as my teacher, as my teaching. I didn't know for a year why I would be filled with tears, like water in my eyes, but it wasn't like crying. It definitely wasn't sadness. And then if it happened, which it usually did because it was an expanding experience for me, I believe the grief stages, and this is not to make anybody wrong, that's why for a long time I didn't want to talk about the grief stages, because the last thing anybody needs when they're suffering is to feel like they did it wrong. But the stages of grief pull us inward, as I said before. What I felt opened me up to the love of the universe. I had experienced more love, a love that I couldn't put words on. But then when I would be teary from all of this love and connection that I never felt before. If you think of the person as I described myself, melancholy, separated, watching soap operas because nothing works out, everybody ends up in pain, romance turns badly, that person was not connected to the world. After Melissa left this world as we know it, I was connected more to her in her essence. But more importantly, I was more connected to everyone else. And so when I would experience this water in my eyes, let's just say, I wouldn't even call them tears. I didn't name it as anything, but the person I was talking to would. And they would say, "Oh, I'm so sorry for making you sad." And I would say, "No, I'm not sad. You didn't make me anything. And I just feel connected to the love from you." But it was teaching me that it was even more than that. I didn't know why I felt so much love. And my daughter just passed. I wasn't feeling more love that she passed. So it's beyond words. It's beyond explanation. It's beyond logic. It's beyond anything that words can describe. Did I somehow answer that, Cyndi?
You answered it perfectly. Yeah, because to me, Rosalyn, like what you're expressing is really like that there's no accidents and everything is a gift. Like that's really just been something that, has come to me over the years of all the things that I thought were problems that I wanted to get rid of, that I thought should have happened differently, that like when we actually can rest in awareness and it's like we suddenly see a big picture. We see like that was Lisa's. I was over here like listening to you say your perception of yourself, because I've only known you the way you are now.
Mm-hmm.
Grace and presence and enthusiasm and joyful and playful and quiet and adventurous. And I like when you say I just sit around melancholy watching soap operas, and I'm like, what? Like you're somebody who's, you came on the Camino with us, which was a very big trip and super expensive, and you're like, I'm all in, let's go. And that's how I know you of it. And that happened after Melissa's passing. It's just like this, the aliveness was there and you were it. And so it just brings me a lot of joy to have you here.
Mhm.
This is crazy that this has been going on. I know that linear time is an illusion, and yet in a linear time standpoint, we've only got like 4 minutes left, which is crazy. And I'd love to give Rosalyn an opportunity to give us a final message. But Lisa, before she does that, rumor has it that TGF TV next week is hosted by you. Would you like to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, I'm bringing the Sawyers on. So Antoinette and Clifton Sawyer are coming on next week. And these two are really like the most mind-blowing ministers I know. And they're going to be talking about the healer within. So that's next Friday, May 7th at 10:30 a.m. And hope you can join me. And thank you, Rosalyn, with all my heart. I love you so much.
I love you too, Lisa.
So Rosalyn, you have about 3 minutes, and I'd love to know what your final message is for everyone.
Well, I think what I want to tell you is that I had an early experience with my mother, and we brought her to our house to die, quote unquote, at home. And I'm going to be very brief. The nurse said she was, quote unquote, dead. And I was prompted to get in bed with her and tell the caregivers to leave the room. And my mother was always very cold, just like physically cold, like I am. But her body was hot, hot, hot. This was after she was dead, quote unquote. And so I felt a strong sense that she could hear me. So I began talking to her, and it went on for 2 hours. And then I finally thought that the men were going to come to pick her up. And so I said, Mom, you need to leave now because we're going to take you to be with Dad, your body to be with Dad. Immediately she got cold and hard. Her head got hard. Her hands stopped holding mine. And so I just want to throw this out there that both our lives and death may not be what we believe them to be.
I was pressing the wrong buttons to come back here. My heart feels wide open. My mind feels quiet. I'm feeling just such tremendous gratitude. You and I have had a number of conversations. Each one of them has blessed me. I ask everyone who's on Facebook right now, if you've been touched by this message, why don't you go ahead and hit the share button? And the other thing that I feel would be extraordinary is if you take a moment and either in the comment section or in your journal, sit and list 3 or 4 or 5 of the very clear things that came out of this hour that you could use to utilize in your life right now. This idea for me, like the first thing, the idea that sensations or emotions only last 60 to 90 seconds in our brain and in our body chemistry unless we attach to them. That in and of itself is mind-blowing. This concept that we can experience whatever's going on in the moment without commentary. Oh my God, that just sort of changes everything. This conversation about death and about being with those we love in the moment. This idea of being able to experience without going through the grievance process. And of course, I join you in stepping out of the closet and allowing guidance to use whatever it's gonna use so that we can all awaken to the one mind right now. How phenomenally cool is that? But that's just in my story. I would love to hear from people what it is and write it down now so you don't, so you don't forget it, and then use it, and then play with it, and then let us know what happens. So that's where I am.
Oh,
Thank you, Rosalyn.
thank you, Cyndi. Thank you, Lisa. It's always a joy to be with you in any form.
All right, that's our hour. I love us. Please share, and then come back to TGF TV next week with Lisa and the Sawyers, and I love us all.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, we stopped the live screen. Bye, everybody. All the participants. Love you all. Bye, Rosalyn.
Bye. Thank you.